Hello everyone, welcome to another E3 2018 coverage video. Today I want to talk about Ghosts of Tsushima. Sony was kind enough to invite me behind the stage, behind the scenes, to just show off the game in a more extensive format. Now, it was basically the same demo as what we saw in the E3 2018 Sony press conference, but the developers were there, and along the way, as they played through this live, it was live code that they showed. They provided a few details, answered a couple questions, and let me tell you, this game is probably one of my favorite games of the show right now. So I'm going to go through my notes here on my phone that I jotted down, starting with the fact that the game will feature both English and Japanese dub. This is something that a lot of people asked for because, I mean, the game is set in feudal Japan, so it wouldn't make sense if everyone spoke English. But fortunately, they are giving you the option, no matter what region you live in, to either have the character speak in English or in Japanese. And when you switch the language to Japanese, you can add subtitles, of course, for those who don't understand Japanese. Now, the demo itself featured no HUD, because they just wanted to present the game in a very cinematic format. But in the final game, there will be some HUD elements, though they didn't specify what that would be, although subtitles is among one of those things. So, this game, according to the developers, was inspired by Akira Kurosawa. No surprises there. Seven Samurai, obviously, was a huge source material for how much inspiration they obtained for all the grounded samurai visual aesthetics that you can see throughout the gameplay. And grounded really is the key here. I think that's what's going to separate this particular title from everything else. Whereas other feudal Japan games tend to feature elements of fantastical, monsters or magic and things like that. This is purely a samurai game. And the main character is a man named Jin, and the developers described him to be the ghost of Tsushima. So the Mongols have invaded, and Jin is this sort of ghost among the Mongols. He goes around and sort of, like a ghost haunts them. And that's the whole point. He's this force to be reckoned with. Then they talked a bit about combat as the demo went on. They eventually they showed off that one bit from the E3 2018 Sony press conference presentation where you have that classic samurai moment where it's almost like a stare down, and then with one fell stroke, he just downs the dude. So the way combat was described to me is that it's all about lethal precision. It's not going to be all anime or kung fu movie style where it's just constant blows and mashing buttons. It is about being patient. It is about that, what they told me, that stare down between samurais and striking at the right moment, and the tension of having to strike in such a precise manner. That is what they're going for. And on top of that, they described that the three tenets of sort of the aesthetics of combat in this game are mud, blood, and steel. They said that combat is going to be very gritty, very grounded, very realistic. And so that is definitely something very different from the norm from other feudal Japan games where it's about pulling off all these combos. Not so in this game. It's about being patient and striking when the moment calls for it. So something unique that they did throughout this, the behind closed doors demo, was that as they went along, they would pause the game and then move the camera around to show us some of the aesthetics of certain scenes and whatnot. And it was very photo mode-esque, and they did confirm to us that they were in fact exploiting the photo mode that they planned to ship with the game for this particular demo to just freeze the game at moments where it just looks absolutely beautiful, when the leaves are rustling by, when Jin strikes, and then they would pause there and then just kind of show us all the details that come with that. Like, at one point, I saw, like, one of the Mongols' mask was sort of taken off, and you could see it kind of in midair. They told me about how every drop of blood is, like, it's not just some effect. They are keeping track of every drop of blood in relation to the world. So every drop of blood will spill. There's just a lot of attention to detail being placed on this game. that I think is just really unprecedented in this style of feudal Japan samurai type of game. As for story, this wasn't something that they delved too deep into, but they did emphasize that this game is about characters. It is about people trying to sort of survive in this Mongol invasion, and we saw at the end of the public demo that they presented that the main character Jin was sort of betrayed, and that ultimately culminated in a one-on-one samurai duel. And it has nothing to do with characters being black and white, good or evil. It has more to do with just sometimes survival takes precedent over everything else, and that twists people's intentions. And that's one of the main things that they're going for with this game, presenting characters who have to survive under these circumstances and maybe do some shady things to do that. And the E3 demo is actually just a side mission. They didn't really talk about what the mainline story would look like, though they did say that this game in a lot of ways will play out like an anthology, in that you meet characters, you realize their story, and then you move on to something else. But there is going to be a mainline story. It's just they are not ready to disclose what that entails quite yet. And then they did a Q&A session, and they had people ask some questions. One of them was sort of just if they could go into more detail about the katana and the feel, both visual and tactile, that they wanted to go for. And something they said was that they wanted to honor the katana. This is the main thing that you're going to wield in this game, and they want every swing of the sword to feel as tactile as possible, and more importantly, for every swing to feel realized visually. So if you slice someone, they don't want just a little, like blood animation. They actually want like the scars to remain, and we did see a lot of fine details in that regard in the E3 presentation that you guys saw, and in the behind closed doors presentation we saw. And they reiterated that it's about precision. They described it akin to, that hand slapping game where you have to like slap somebody's hand and they have to like use their reflexes to dodge that game. I don't know what it's called. They said like that, it's kind of like that. It's that tension, that waiting game, that precision that is pivotal to this particular combat system. As for progression, they did say there would be a progression system in this game, but they weren't ready to talk about what exactly that was yet. But yeah, one of the main things they wanted to highlight was that Jin started out as someone who honored the samurai code to a T, but then with the Mongol invasion, he's had to sort of break away from that code and improvise more and learn other techniques, hence why we see him at one point take a more stealthy approach and sort of do a little parkour and go up the ceiling and kind of be very Assassin's Creed-like, which is not something samurais tend to do, but Jin had to adapt to his environment, to the invasion. And so as you go along further into the game, Jin will pick up new techniques, new moves, new maneuvers that will flesh out his just combat prowess. Now, I asked about whether the game will feature elements of customization, and they said yes, you will be able to find outfits and change your character's appearance as you go along. I asked them about whether you can get like new katanas and stuff like that instead of the one that you already have. They didn't talk too much about that, but aesthetically, yes, you will be able to customize them and make them look however badass you want to make them look. And somebody actually asked an interesting question about the scope of battle. How many people will you be fighting at the same time? And what they said is that this combat system is grounded, it's sort of personal, and more realistic. So while Jin is a very capable individual who can take on multiple opponents at a time, he's not a superhuman. If he fights against 10 people, chances are you will die. So they're treating Jin as a man, as any other person living throughout these times, except that he's more skilled than the average person. Combat-wise, he can just do more. He's extremely capable, but he can be felled. He's not superhuman. The last question that was asked was about dynamic weather, and the reason we asked this was because during the behind-the-scenes presentation, they actually highlighted this cluster of sort of stormy clouds in the distance. And they said that wasn't like just scenery, that was rain happening in real time that we were seeing ways off. And so they confirmed that there would be dynamic weather. They confirmed that this game would be open world and that players would be discovering. And the world was described to be massive. So you saw in the demo how open and wide and vast those landscapes were. They said that, you know, the stuff you see in the distance, you can go there. That's not just scenery. And the dynamic weather, they didn't explain if that would have any kind of gameplay ramifications. So if it's raining, how does that change the combat dynamics in any way? They didn't go into that. They just confirmed, yes, dynamic weather, and I guess we'll find out more about how that affects gameplay down the line. And that's pretty much it. That's all the new information I managed to get from the behind-the-scenes presentation. But the demo itself, I didn't see any new footage. It was just the same demo from Sony's press conference, but played live. So there was someone in the room who had a controller in hand and went through the whole demo live. And so things could have gone wrong, but they didn't. Things went pretty smoothly. It's a strange departure because Sucker Punch did Infamous, and that was very much way out there, superheroes, superpowers. This feels like the complete opposite of that. But you know what? Based on what I've seen, I'm totally fine with that. I'm loving this more grounded, more focused take on samurais. Oh, and speaking of story, while this is based on history, it was emphasized that it isn't historically accurate. It is their own story, their own take on elements of the feudal Japanese history. Anyway, that's it for this news update. Thank you for tuning in, folks. I'll bring you more coverage of other games down the line. Look forward to those. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, you know what to do. Stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out.